Welcome to the Believe in Texans podcast alongside former Houston Texans wide receiver, 6-year NFL veteran Cecil III. I'm Patrick Creighton, host of Area 45 on Sports Radio 610, your home for all things Houston Texans, the flagship station of the Texans. And Cecil, this is the biggest game of the Demeco Ryans era for the Houston Texans. This is their biggest, quote, measuring stick game to date, and it's against the Detroit Lions, maybe the best team in the NFC. They've won 6 straight games. They have looked tremendous. This is a game where, we've seen the Texans do well coming off of adversity. We've not seen them necessarily do well coming off of success or continued success. But the last time out, the Texans got absolutely ran over by the just defensive front. And to have seen CJ get sacked 8 times and basically be under siege the entire game. Now you're going to do it against the best team in the NFC, who even without Aiden Hutchinson can still get after the quarterback. They run the ball very well with a combination backfield of Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery. Jared Goff is playing at an elite level right now. This is a very, to me, this is the real challenge for the Texans. What are you against the Detroit Lions at home on Sunday night, prime time, all eyes on you? Because there's a lot of things to clean up from last week for a team that is very talented and had aspirations of at least getting to an AFC title game. Walking into this game, what are the most important things for the Houston Texans against this Lions team, things that they have to get right from the last several weeks?
Well, you know what? You said the best team in the NFC for the Lions. I personally think they're the best team in the NFL right now. The way they're playing. I know they have one loss. I know the Chiefs are who the Chiefs are. But I have so much respect for what uh, um, the Lions are doing on all sides of the football right now. Jared Goff to me is an MVP caliber. He should be in the MVP conversation of how good he's playing right now. He's extremely accurate. There's been 2 or 3 games, at least 2, where his completion and incompletion. He's like 19 to 22, or at one point I think he was like 20 straight completions. He is just on point with his decision making. Their offensive line is outstanding. I mean, literally outstanding. They have 2 running backs. You mentioned Jamar and David. They're on pace for 1,000 yards, both of them, and double-digit touchdowns. Like, they are a special unit. They have both safeties, Brian Branch and Joseph, in top 5 when it comes to interceptions. Like, they're just playing top tier football right now. They're extremely confident. And you can say this is the biggest test of date, like you mentioned, in Demeco's history and Demeco's tenure. This season, of course, because everybody knew coming in the Lions would be good. We didn't know coming in this year the Vikings would be good. We didn't know that, right? We knew coming in the Bills would be good, but they were kind of banged up against when the Texans played them, right? So this is to date by far is the biggest game this season and of Demeco's tenure. What they need to do, to answer your question, they need to figure out this offensive line. What is the matchups going to be, right? Who's going to play center? Who's going to play left guard? They have to improve that pass protection there. I wouldn't say phenomenal. I would say excellent in the run game. They're doing pretty darn good in the run game. But when it comes to pass pro, I think it's on Bobby Slowick, and I think it's on the offensive line. I think it's on CJ. I think they have to come up with schemes, with hot routes, with getting him off his platform, getting him, I guess, his launch point, I want to say. His launch point can't be the same place every single time when he's dropping back. Move the pocket. Find different ways to get him away from the pressure and let him find his receivers. To me, he's lost confidence. CJ has lost confidence. And to build that back up, you need hot routes. You need to have him know exactly, okay, where the pressure is coming from. Do I have an answer for it, right? So I think that's the biggest thing coming into here. Who are you going to have at the offensive line, and then building CJ's confidence back up, and then Slowick have to call the plays? I know it's all offensive side, but I think that's your biggest problem right now. I truly do. The biggest problem to me is the offensive side of the football.
See, so you think about the offensive line and how all offseason they drew rave reviews. And in the preseason, they drew rave reviews. And early in the season, right, they get off to a solid start. And then steadily and surely, this offensive line basically dissolved into the abyss. And it's like, how does this happen over the piece of 2 months where everything is going in the right direction for so long, and then all of a sudden you just hit this downward spiral and you can't get out of it? For as much heat as Kenyon Green has taken, and the inconsistency with which he played, Shaq Mason's been worse. Shaq's given up 7.5 sacks this year. That's insane to me that Shaq Mason has given up, knowing the kind of player he has been his entire career, that he's given up 7.5 sacks this year. That there are a lot of times where it seems like Juice Scruggs doesn't know who to block. That's the guy who's making the calls. And, DJ Bieniemy, who covers the team for ESPN, had said that from what his understanding is that Juice is making the right calls. So then they're just not executing. And now, you're hoping Jared Patterson is going to be healthy because he's probably going to be your left guard. The fact that they're guys who that they expected to play well, nobody ever would have thought, oh, well, Shaq Mason's going to be a liability at right guard. Nobody would have thought that. Not coming into the season, but that's how it's been. They did not make a move at the deadline. They could have gone out and traded for a guard, and if going and getting the guard from Cleveland, who's a Pro Bowl caliber guard, and maybe you had to give up a third to get him, whatever. You're protecting your franchise quarterback, and you're trying to get your season going in the right direction. I thought it was strange. They did not make any move to bring players in at the trade deadline. And look, Nick Caserio has shown over the years he has been really adept at finding players off the scrap heap, finding guys on the waiver wire, finding guys who, aren't, basically they're just not working out with their current team for whatever reason, bringing them in, and then they're playing well here. We saw this a lot last year. Like DeAndre Houston Carson was a perfect example of guys who come in here and play well. And he had some guys on the defensive line who played well. And like he has done really well at picking guys up off the scrap heap who fit into what the Texans do. But how long does that take? That's kind of, well, the situation has to be right. Those players have to become available. You can't make them become available. So I feel like this was a risk that the Texans were taking. No, we'll handle it in-house. We have enough guys, but those guys haven't shown this year that they're getting it done.
It was disappointing to me not seeing a move at the trade deadline because the Ravens made a move at the trade deadline. The Chiefs made a move at the trade deadline. Like the Steelers made a move at the trade deadline. You had teams in the NFC that are contending for the Super Bowl or trying to get deep playoff runs. They made a move at the trade deadline. So to me, when you have opponents in the AFC trying to get better and push, and they're the same situation as you, trying to make a run to the Super Bowl, and they make moves and you don't, I feel like you're getting behind, right?
The Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Steelers, everybody you're competing with, they all made moves.
Yep.
And the Texans said, "Nah, we're good."
And that's frustrating. And I get, to me, I was thinking this too. It's harder to trade for an offensive lineman than a skill guy. Skill guys come, it's tons of them. You can get a guy, there's more on, it's just tons of them. I get it. Receivers can come in here and go. Offensive linemen are harder to deal because most teams, they want to keep their guys, keep that depth. And if they really like them, they want to keep them in-house, right? Unless they get a super good deal for them. And I was looking at like a Cam Robinson. He got traded from the Jaguars. He was not playing well for the Jaguars. He was starting, and he was not playing well. He gets traded to Minnesota in his first game. He looks outstanding, right? So it takes a lot to trade for a lineman, but at the same time, if you're in this to win it, what are you waiting for? If you're in this to win it, and if the price is not crazy, like why wouldn't you give up a third round for a Bettino, right? And with the Browns, Why wouldn't you go out and try to find a guy that could help you right away? Um, you know where the help is. And I've been a part of organizations and teams where a quarterback is ruined because the offensive line is not as good as it should be, or because they don't have the weapons around him. And what I'm seeing from CJ right now, he's starting to lose a little bit of confidence in his offensive line, probably a lot of confidence, and he's not going through his progression. He's not the same player he was. Doesn't have the same attitude in the game. Every time he scrambles, he's running for his life and kind of doing the same running, spinning out the pocket. It just doesn't seem the CJ doesn't seem like the CJ that we've seen before, right? And if you don't get that together, it's going to be hard for him to come back to who he was. So that's why I'm disappointed. You have to figure this out ASAP. It should be at the top of your list. And if it's in house, great. But if it's not, and things don't get better between now and the end of the season, you're gonna be like, why didn't we make a move to make something happen?
I believe that's called getting David Card.
Mm, mm,
And, when you're the franchise that turned a number one overall pick into a verb, maybe it should stick a little. Maybe
mm.
the idea of protecting your new franchise quarterback, you don't want to let him get card. But that I share that frustration a lot. And I think a lot of Texans fans share that frustration. We take a look right now. The Texans in this game are 3.5-point underdogs at home on Sunday night. And, of course, if you like that line, one way or the other, Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. So make sure you head out to Bet Online and get in on all the action. 3.5. I gotta tell you right now, I'm not feeling 3.5.
What you feeling?
I'm feeling like it's gonna be more.
Mm.
This is the first time all year I'm looking at a game coming in and saying I don't like where the Texans are in this game.
Mm.
And a lot of that has to do with the fact the offensive line has struggled as much as they have. But I do think it's important to note that the last couple of weeks where CJ has really struggled and the offense has really struggled have included Nico not being in the lineup and now Stephon Diggs not being in the lineup. And without those two guys, I think they just don't have the weapons to play fast enough against high pressure where they don't have enough guys to get separation that quickly to make a play. I think Tank can do it, but I think every other team knows Tank can do it. So he's going to get doubled. And then you're going to get the Robert Woods and the John Mechie's and the Dalton Schultz's and these guys. So they're not getting open in 2 seconds.
Mm.
And I think that not having Nico, because look, when teams came after CJ earlier in the year, he almost always went to Nico. Like Nico was the guy who, I'm in trouble, find Nico.
Yep.
And that's 75%. I'm going to make that play.
Yep.
And I think as the offensive line has continued to break down, the loss of Nico Collins has been felt more and more because that's the guy that really has that Bluetooth connection with CJ Stroud right now. It's Nico Collins. And huge news for the Texans today that Nico Collins designated to return, cleared to be back at practice, had been running north of 20 miles an hour before today, earlier this week. And it feels to me like Nico Collins is going to play Sunday night, and that the delay in clearing him officially has been more about gamesmanship than about where Nico truly is health-wise. But getting Nico back on the field, I think, is the biggest thing that can happen for this offense because of his connection with CJ Stroud.
I agree with that. Nico would be a big help, right? He was obviously one of the playing at a high level, one of the best receivers in the NFL, kind of becoming a star right before of our eyes. No doubt about it. But even with him back, Pat, I feel like the offense needs to change a tad bit as far as you mentioned the center was calling the blocking schemes up front, right? They're making the mic calls and doing that. Maybe that's more of a CJ thing now. Maybe CJ needs to be able to see the field, see the defense, make the mic calls, understand what's coming based on the film you watch, based on the down and the percentage of the blitz, what may come. Maybe he should be more in charge of the offense. That way he can have a better understanding. Hey, if this guy comes, whoever's in my slot to my left, you got a 5 yard out, or you have a this is a 5 yard hitch route, right? Or hey, if this guy comes on the right, make sure you run your route. I think he needs more control. Even though Nico's coming back, that'll be a huge help, no doubt about it. But I think he needs more control of the offense to fully understand and play better. Because if I'm a quarterback, I want to know where my answer is at, just in case there is pressure that comes, right? I want to know, okay, if there is pressure, if there is stunts, if there is things that come out of my control, where do I have an answer to that? Where's my check down, right? I haven't seen him too many times this year hit the check down when pressure comes. He's more trying to get out the pocket himself. Where is the check down, right? Obviously, you have a back sometimes that's helping in protection, but after protection hits or nobody comes, then he can go to the flat. Because there's times where they're getting pressure from just four guys. So maybe he checks the running back, checks the A gap, checks the B gap, checks the C gap. Nobody's coming. He should be able to hit in the flat route. We should be able to hit him quickly coming out in those situations. So I think Nico will be a huge help, but I think just understanding a little bit from a quarterback standpoint, he needs to really grasp the entire offense and have answers for no matter what's coming his way. That would be the difference between him and Bobby Slowick. That would be the difference really moving forward, how this offense can get better.
No, listen, I 100% agree with that. There's got to be adjustments to the offense, and there definitely has to be adjustments to the protection schemes.
Mm,
But I do think that Nico forces teams to defend differently.
he does.
They
He does.
can't, they're not going to be able to say, okay, hey, you know what? We don't have to. The only wide receiver we're concerned about is Tank Dell. Everybody else we could cover one on one. We're not worried about it. Now you've got Nico Collins. He beats one on one every time. Hell, he beats one on two every time. He beats your zone. He is almost unguardable. This is, I don't want to say conspiracy theory because I
Oh,
know the connotation that that has had lately, but we want to keep this in a football sense. I feel like with Stephon Diggs being out and Nico being back, we are more likely to see the Tank Dell of last year start to emerge. I think last week, as the number one receiver, he showed you, look, he could get open, he could beat him. But now that he's not, quote, the tertiary option, and maybe it was getting too hard to find the tertiary option because, oh, well, Nico's open, we'll just throw it to him.
yeah.
And you have to get Steph his targets. That maybe Tank was squeezed out of the offense a little bit, and it had a negative impact on him.
Mm.
Now that he is a more focal point of the offense again, I feel like we will see the better versions of Tank Dell and the excitement that he brought last year, and start to see the guy who we saw last week now on a more consistent basis because he's going to be a bigger part of the offense.
I think having all those weapons, just think about the first 9 weeks, was too much for Bobby Slowick. I think it was too much. I think we took for granted, oh, they got Stephon Diggs and Dalton Schultz and Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Joe Mixon and Damian Pierce that, oh, they'll be fine. You can call anything. It's hard for a play caller to figure out how to get guys the ball, how to get guys open, and then not lose somebody, right? And then I feel like Tank got lost in the shuffle. I truly, truly do. I think the pressure of Nico playing so well, clearly being the number one receiver, the pressure of having Stephon Diggs now and getting him his targets, right? And even the pressure of, and it wasn't going on. Nothing was going on with Stephon, but even hearing, from Buffalo and hey, if you got to make sure you get him the ball, that type of pressure, right? And then the pressure of running the football and running the football well and evolving in the running game, which they have been doing. I think that got to Bobby, and I think he kind of lost Tank in the sauce. So I agree with you. I think Tank last week 5 for 120 ish. Really played well, made the most of his targets, right? But having him and hopefully Nico back on Sunday, I don't know if he's officially playing yet, but those two together, like you mentioned last year, they were a dangerous threat. He was one of the top targets on the team easily, and I think that also helps Dalton Schultz get back in the mix too. I think him that helps him get more targets, more plays down the field. Now, any pass catcher, the more targets and times you can get into the game, it builds your confidence and you get back in a rhythm. So I think this can be a positive again for Tank and Dalton Schultz.
See, and that takes, you just led into what my next thing was going to be is, you as a former receiver, when you've got a guy, let's say you're having a game where like this drive, you're just killing it. You made 3 straight catches, 3 straight first downs, teams moved you down the field, and then it's okay, now we got to spread the ball around. And I think that has a detrimental effect because guys never get in a rhythm if everybody knows, all right, well, yeah, it could come to me at any time, but like when you're in a rhythm and you know you're beating your guy, you exploit that until they make the change.
Yep.
And I feel like that's something that has been an issue is they hit the same guy once or twice and say, okay, now we got to go somewhere else. No, make them adjust. Yeah. Keep hit. Like in that game, I'd have kept going to tank every single time until they made an adjustment that I couldn't do it. With the running game, if they're not going to bring that 8th guy up into the box and Joe is able to do his thing and pick up 5, 6, 7 yards, I'm going to run him down your throat until you stop him.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what, Pat? I think that's the frustrating part about the offense lately. You're running the ball. Joe Mixon is running the ball at a high level. The play action pass should be there. Like the play action pass, you should be able to throw the ball down the field, intermediate, short game. You should have those options. Now that comes with protection, right? Obviously. But the play action game, maybe keeping an extra tight end in there to block or whatever, it should be open. When you have a run game, it opens up the whole entire pass offense. But it hasn't been that way. And I think that's frustrating. And I think that also puts pressure on CJ Stroud. And I think he's feeling the pressure, not only physically from defensive linemen, but the pressure to spread the ball around. Instead of just hitting the guys that are open, that's what they did last year. It wasn't, hey, you got to get this guy this many targets. You got to get this guy this many targets. Don't forget about this guy. It's just he's reading, going through his progression. Nico's open, great. Tank's open, great. Tank's opens again, great. Like going through his progression, finding the open guy, getting those guys in rhythm, you're trying to keep people happy maybe, right? So now that Stephon, and I don't want him on IR, but now that he's out, maybe this can help the offense get in more of a rhythm. With a solid run game you have, Nico's back, Tank's back, Schultz is back. This is what we saw last year. This is the same group we had last year. Can that rhythm come from those 3-4 guys? Can we get back to the old Texans offense, right, with some dynamic plays going down the field? And I need to see more explosive down the field, man. And I get it comes from protection. I get that. But the run game, even when you play action, Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce can pass protect after the play action. So that's 6 guys right there. You keep another tight end in, that's 7 guys. You should be able to pass protect. It shouldn't be an issue. Because those guys can't be checked one-on-one. I'm sorry. I watched Tank last year, Arizona game. He couldn't be stopped one-on-one. He was having a day. Tampa Bay game, he was having a day. Nico Collins this year can't be checked one-on-one. So when you have that opportunity and those things happen, you got to take advantage of it, man. So hopefully we'll see it this week.
Yeah, it's kind of what I feel like, it's like when you go to the restaurant and the menu is 9 pages long. And it's like, man, I don't know what I want to order. And it takes you 15 minutes to try to figure out what you're going to do. If the menu is 1 page, you know what you're getting.
Yep.
I think it's an opportunity for the Texans to kind of streamline the offense, get the menu down to 1 page, and know what you're going to do.
Yep. That's a great way to put it.
Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball because Will Anderson Jr., who suffered an ankle injury in the game against the Jets. They retaped him. He came back in, but then he kind of had limited snaps. Has not practiced at all this week. Is not going to play on Sunday night. And look, Jared Goff is an incredibly accurate quarterback right now. And you mentioned how great he's been so far. Listen to this. He is completing on the season 74.9% of his passes. That's insane. And for his last 5 games, it's 84.4. They've got to get him to move his feet.
Yeah.
You cannot allow Jared Goff to sit in the pocket and make throws because he's going to pick you apart. They can't. They have to get him to move his feet. And now they've got to do it without their best pass rusher. Is this an opportunity for you where maybe, Denico Autry is a guy who's played inside, outside. He's played a lot of inside so far since he's come back for the Texans. Does this week, do you move Denico Autry outside so that he and Danielle Hunter can be those bookends and let them be your primary rushers?
I don't know about that. I need to watch more of Denico when he's outside because I'll be honest with you, you're going against two really good tackles this week. This offensive line, I mentioned before, is solid. If not the best in the league, they're one of the best. Definitely playing one of the best in the league, man. With Decker and Sewell at the ends, the bookends, I don't know if you want to put Archery out there. It might be a mismatch for him to be against one of the guards, right, or against the center. That may be his style. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a tough test. And you hit the nail on the head. You got to move Jared Goff off his launch spot. If you keep him, if he has no pressure, he can stand there. He's going to pick you apart all day long. It's not going to be crazy. It's going to be normal passes, just extremely accurate, extremely on time. Him and St. Brown have this connection. I know Laporta hasn't been like as hasn't had the yards in the big games as previous year. I think last year he had a huge year, but he's still productive, right? Jameson Williams, when he's out there not suspended, he can make plays down the field. You have to get pressure on Golf, but I think first, honestly, you got to stop that run. If you don't stop that run, you're in for a long day. You got to stop Montgomery. You got to stop Gibbs. Period. Like period. If you don't stop the run, Golf, it doesn't matter what Golf does because they're gonna keep running the ball and they're gonna pound it and they're gonna put 50 points on you. I watched them do it multiple times this year. They will try to embarrass you if you don't stop this run. And that's going to be a full effort from Denico, from Daniil, from the backers, safeties coming up making tackles. If you don't stop this run, they will embarrass you. These are grown men. This is not high school ball where there was a running clock. This is not CFP where they, whatever the case may be, all this, the integrity of the game. No, they will embarrass you. So you're totally right about Golf, but I think it starts with stopping the run.
Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, between the two of them, they've combined for over 1,100 yards and 14 rushing touchdowns on the season. I mean, that's those guys are that is probably. I think that's the best running back tandem in the league.
No,
those two guys do everything. And you figure, Jahmyr Gibbs also has a receiving touchdown. Those guys do catch passes out of the backfield. They combined for 37 receptions out of the backfield and 320 plus yards. So they're not guys you can just ignore in the passing game. But you mentioned, Amon-Ra St. Brown's got 48 catches. Nobody else on the team has 23. So it is, to me, it's all about in the passing game. That's the guy that's going to beat you is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And yeah, you mentioned Jameson Williams, not suspended, averages over 20 yards a catch. Sam Laporta, tight end's got a couple of touchdowns. Tell me if I'm crazy or not. I'm going to double Amon-Ra St. Brown all game. I don't care which side of the ball he's on. He's going to have a corner and a safety on top of him all game long, no matter what. I don't care where he is. I think I want to put Jalen Petrie on Laporta.
Okay.
And let Jalen, who likes to play physical, get physical with the tight end. And, then your whoever the other cornerback is going to be responsible for Jameson Williams. And I know that I'm running the risk of the guy who takes it off the top. But I have to stop Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I want to be physical with tight end.
I'm with you on that. I think you do need to find a way to double St. Brown. St. Brown's a tough physical kid, smaller size, but man, he knows how to get open, right? He reminds me of like a Hines Ward type of receiver in his prime. Just really, really short stature, can make any guy miss when it comes to coverage. So you need to double him. Like he is the guy. You said 48 catches. He's doubled maybe anybody that up under him, if I'm not mistaken. But if you double him, you got to make sure you have guys in the box, right? So I do think you have to be man somewhere. Like you mentioned, yeah, you be man on with a speedster and Jameson Williams, but you have to have guys in that box. Like you have no choice. You have to stop the run. And then Jameson, to me, he's been developing and getting better, but he's still inconsistent with his hands, right? So if you can be physical in the line of scrimmage, make him make the tough catch, I can live with that. But if you let these guys run, oh my gosh! Like if you do not stop this run, it's going to be a long day for all of us in Houston. Any Texans fans, it's going to be a super long day. So you need to have seven, maybe seven guys in the box, and then doubling Brown. But you have to stop that run for sure.
And you mentioned the difference between St. Brown and Williams. St. Brown, even though he's not a 6 foot, right? He's not a 6'3". He's not Nico Collins,
Right.
but he's 6 foot and 205 pounds, and he's strong, and he can be physical, and he can win those handsy battles. Jameson Williams 6'1", a buck 80, and he might not really be a buck 80. You can push him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can use his speed to beat you, but you can use your physicality to get him off his lines.
Yeah.
And, we kind of saw this with Mike Williams with the Jets, how, teams got him off his lines, and then he's in the wrong spot, and Aaron Williams is throwing the ball to a spot, and he's not there. Aaron's not. Yep. Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball to a spot. He's not throwing to where the receiver is. He's throwing to where he expects the receiver to be. And Mike's not there because he got off his line. You can get a guy like Jameson Williams off his line. And that helps, make it harder on Jared Goff, who's expecting him to be, maybe he's expecting him to be outside the numbers, but now he's on the numbers and he's in the wrong spot.
Yep. Totally agree with that.
From this game we mentioned earlier, 3.5 point underdog. The Texans are at home. What is your prediction for this game? What do the Texans need? Well, let's start with this. What do the Texans need to do to win this game against a very tough opponent?
They need to keep the Lions off the field, in my opinion. So you need to have long possessions. You need to score points when you're on offense, right? So the longer the drives, 10-play drives, 11-play drives, 12-play drives, now you're letting your defense rest, number one, because they'll need it going against that offense. But two, you're putting pressure on Jared Goff to make sure he's efficient on the other side of the football, right? So I think that's number one. Have long drives, successful drives, and score points. Number two, stop the run. If you stop the run and you have long drives, now you're putting pressure on Jared Goff. Is he really an MVP caliber guy, right? Can Jared Goff beat you? That's what I want to see. I don't want to see the run game beat you. I know what they can do. They're dynamic. And I'm not taking no disrespect to Jared Goff, but I think he's really, really good. But you have to put pressure on him to be able to really try to get them off rhythm. You know what I mean? Like off schedule. And then thirdly, you're going to have to find a way to get a turnover. You have to find a way to get an extra possession because this team, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to say it again. They're the best team in football right now. It's week 10, right, Pat? It's week 10?
Week 10.
They're the best team in football as a week 10. The Detroit Lions are, from quarterback to how they're running the offense to how they're playing defense, how they're forcing the turnover, winning the turnover battle, how they're running. Like, it's just so much that goes into it. They're playing at a high level. You have to find a way to get a turnover to the possession. And again, you have to score points. So those will be my, I guess, keys, quote unquote, to figuring out how to win a game versus the Detroit Lions.
Through 8 games, because they've already had a bye week, the Lions are tied for the NFL league with a plus 11 turnover differential. They have 11 interceptions and 5 fumble recoveries. Their 16 total takeaways are third best in the NFL, despite having played 8 games and not 9. Like that defense finds the football.
They do.
And that's why I think the number one, CJ Stroud needs to be upright and he needs to be able to set his feet. And by any means necessary, I would rather they take a penalty than let CJ get hit hard.
Yeah.
Because if you take the penalty and then block the next down, he'll get the yards back. I'd rather they take a penalty. I also don't want to see them do this. Well, this is who we got, so we're just going to keep playing these guys, even though they're not getting the job done. If Shaq is out there getting his head kicked in, take him out. And I know that, excuse me 1 second. Sorry, I don't have a mute button.
No, you're fine.
I know that, I don't want to move Titus Howard inside. He's a right tackle.
He
He's
is.
a well-paid right tackle.
Yes, he is.
There is a possibility they may need to move him inside because they don't have the bodies who can play guard. Because maybe the next best offensive lineman is Blake Fisher, your backup tackle. I don't like the idea of playing Titus inside. It's definitely not his best position. Right tackle is his best position. But if he is going to be better than who they have, we're getting to a point where it's got to be considered. And I hate that we're considering that. But I think we have to consider it at this point.
Yeah.
If Jared Patterson can hold down left guard, maybe Titus needs to move into right guard if Shaq can't get it done. And look, I know he gets paid a lot of money. I know he's a veteran, a leader, and all that nonsense. If you're not getting it done and you're getting our quarterback killed, we can't score, there's a seat on the bench for you. And, 10 weeks into the season, I understand, okay, guy had a bad game. Guy's playing through an injury, and maybe he struggled for 2 weeks. Okay, it's 9 weeks. If that 9 weeks you're getting worse instead of better, I think we got to have hard conversations. And, I think that's job number one, protect C.J. Stroud at all costs, no matter what. They got to get pressure on Goff. And without Will Anderson Jr., it's going to be hard. But they've got to get pressure on Goff. They've got to make him uncomfortable. They can't just let him, set his foot, survey the field, and start slinging darts. And much as you said, I think they've got to get turnovers.
Yeah.
Goff doesn't really turn the ball over much. He's only thrown 4 picks. He's not an interception machine. But if you make him move, we've seen in the past, when you make him move and he has to make throws where he's uncomfortable, he's on the run, the accuracy drop. We've seen that in past seasons, that if you make him get out of the pocket and move for his life, he can get inaccurate with the football. So to me, those two things kind of go hand in hand, getting the pressure to cause the turnover. What's your prediction for this game?
Just being honest, this will be the first time I picked them to lose. So I do think that Detroit is, again, one of the best teams in football. I think the Texans, I'm hoping they win, but I'm picking them to lose this week. Probably somewhere like 31-17. 31-17, somewhere like that.
Because we're using the head and not the heart. I got the Lions 28-24. I think if the Texans are going to have a chance to win this game, they have to hold the Lions under 25 points. I don't trust the Texans line to hold up for a true old school shootout. So I feel like if the Texans are going to win, they've got to keep the Lions 25 or under. I don't think the Texans line will protect CJ well enough for him to put up 35 points. I'd love to be wrong about that. I'd love to be wrong about that.
No, I agree with you. I'm interested to see what adjustments they made in 10 days. Like, you had 10 days since your last debacle. And I think this is important because the last time you played on national TV, you didn't look good. You have to have a good showing on Sunday night. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're not talking about winning the AFC South. Winning the AFC South is not a big deal right now. It's just not. It's just a debacle. Jacksonville's terrible. Tennessee's terrible. The Colts are who the Colts are, right? They just lost with Flacco to it.
They don't know who they are right now. They really don't.
They're trying to figure it out, right? So winning the AFC South is not a big deal. Are you a true Super Bowl contender? If you can figure out a way to win this game and make the corrections needed, then we can say, okay, hey, we can come back Monday like, hey, we got something here. Like, they figured it out. Bobby's doing a heck of a job. He did a good job. If you have the same, you lost two out of the last 3, if I'm not mistaken. You lost to Green Bay, you beat Indy, and then you lost to the Jets. You lost 2 of the last 3. You have to show on prime time that you're a legit contender. Period. The world is watching you. They lost you last week against the Jets. Everybody kind of gave you an excuse. They were more talking about Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and those guys. They kind of like let you slide up under the bar, right? No, Nico's not there. They got some injuries. Boom. Sunday night, the world's going to see how good you really are. And then guess what? You got Monday night versus the struggling Cowboys. You better show up and play that game well too. But this, to me, I'm very interested to see. Very interested to see what type of team they are, what type of team shows up, what type of coaching changes they will make, what type of adjustments they will make. You had 10 days to prepare. So this is going to be a big game, not only for the players, but for the coaches as well. You're being evaluated. Like,
No,
how good are the Houston Texans?
this game is contender pretender separation point.
Big time.
You know,
Big
if
time.
if I understand you might lose this game, but if you play well and this is a tooth and nail fought game, you've earned some points in the okay, yeah, this team could be for real. Let's see if they can just tidy up this or that, how close they
Yes.
were.
Yes.
They could be there. If you get rolled, you are in pretender status. Period.
Yep.
The end. Don't care.
Yep.
Because unless you go out and beat the Chiefs and the Ravens, you're in pretender status. This is where we see who they are.
Agreed.
He is former Houston Texans wide receiver, 6-year NFL veteran Cecil Shorts. I'm Patrick Creighton, host of Area 45, Sports Radio 610, your flagship home for the Texans. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Believe in Texans podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And we will hopefully see you with a game recap. That'll be a happy recap. Texans getting it together, giving us a little surprise, and taking down the Detroit Lions. Hopefully, we will see you with that win next week. Until then, let's go Texans.